Welcome to everyone in Seven Community in the partnership with PhotoWings. This was a short video just to highlight some topics that we like to discuss in Seven Community. And also one of the topics we really are keen on is research-based projects. So this month we decided to invite Mathieu to give us a bit of an insight into his projects that he does quite on long time span. Most of you will know his book of Monsanto, on which I think, Mathieu, you worked quite a few years, and which then really culminated in a proper book which received quite international acclaim. So you will present that to our Seven community, but then also probably some other topics. And I would also really encourage everyone, because usually after each lecture, we have quite an intense and interesting debate. I will say that, I don't know, Mathieu, how you would like to do it. Do you prefer to have questions during the session, or do you prefer we do them all at the end?
I think it's better at the end.
Yeah.
I think it keeps the flow going. So.
All right. So yeah, that's then we'll do it at the end. But really welcome to Seven Community, and we're super happy you responded to our request.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for being here. So we're ready.
Yes, I think we're ready. I think you can really start the screen sharing. You can start the presentation. As I said, I'll keep quiet, but if you need something, please just let me know. And obviously, I'm here.
Perfect. So I will start. So with my my work on Monsanto. Let me put this on full screen. Everybody, yes, full screen. Again, thank you very much for being here. Let's start with my work of Monsanto. Monsanto, a photographic investigation. Monsanto, this work took me 6 years, around 6 years when I started until the book was finally published. And the work, as I think the name is very clear, the work is about Monsanto and is an investigation on Monsanto. Of course, who says investigation says research. So it's many years of research on the subject. So what is the work about? Of course, the work is about Monsanto, but the work is to try to understand what Monsanto is. So for the few of you that don't know who is Monsanto, Monsanto is a petrochemical, but also they sell seeds, pesticides, but is a multinational. It used to be in the United States, but a few years ago, Bayer in Germany bought it. So now is a part of the Bayer group. So Monsanto has a very long history. Today, Monsanto is better known for their agribusiness. They sell genetically modified seeds, and also they sell and they produce the pesticides that go with, and all the technology that is needed in the agriculture, and agriculture at an industrial level, of course. So Monsanto, at the time I started the work, was starting to be known to be a very redless company. They had a lot of problems with farmers, pollution, and it was named one of the worst companies, multinationals in the world. But it was very the beginning of that. So I think one of the first works never published about Monsanto, like a big publication, was Vanity Fair, who did an article called the Harvest of Fear. And they were talking about the problematic in the Midwest of the United States with patented seeds. Monsanto produced seeds that are genetically modified so they can resist to one of their main products that is called Roundup, that is a herbicide. It means it kills all the bad weed in the crops, leaving alive only the crops that are genetically modified. That means the corn, canola, alfalfa, etc., etc., etc. But nonetheless, Monsanto had a lot of problematics, not only contamination, but in the way they were persecuting farmers in the United States that were accused of using illegally their seeds. We need to understand that you cannot keep the Monsanto seeds, the genetically modified Monsanto seeds belong to Monsanto. It's the first time we start doing trademarks in natural organisms like seeds. It's the first time we do trademarks on seeds. So the problem is that you buy the seeds, but you cannot reuse the seeds as farmers used to do for thousands of years, meaning that you need to sell all the seeds and buy new seeds so you can plant the next harvest. Of course, the Midwest, something like 60% is Monsanto and 80% is genetically modified. So it's very hard for farmers to not have a contamination from Monsanto seeds. So Monsanto knew that. Nonetheless, they have this type of police in the Midwest regulating who use Monsanto seed and who doesn't, who has signed the contract and who is not, who hasn't signed the contracts of Monsanto. So of course they find in many crops genetically modified traces of Monsanto that farmers that haven't ever buy Monsanto seeds. And of course, this is called cross-pollination. Seeds fail, seeds get thrown with the wind, seeds get mixed with other seeds. So it's very hard to control, to be sure you're not using involuntarily Monsanto seeds. And Monsanto knows that, and he used this as a weapon of marketing. What happened is that they took to court many farmers, accusing them of using illegally their seeds. What is good for them, because this has created in the Midwest of the United States a state of fear, meaning that even people that doesn't use Monsanto seeds, they start switching to Monsanto seeds because they say, I want to avoid the problem, so I prefer to buy their seeds, so like that, nothing can happen. So, and of course, this is one of the many stories of Monsanto. Monsanto started in 1901 with artificial sweeteners, and until the late 70s, they produced every type of product derived from in the chemical industry. This is why at the very beginning, in the most of his life, Monsanto was a petrochemical industry, chemical industry, and it became later on in the 90s an agricultural business. So they produce paints, they produce synthetic fabrics, they produce lubricant, they produce so many types of chemicals, among them Agent Orange that was used in Vietnam. So my idea was to understand why Monsanto is doing what it's doing today, and to understand that, and also to try to understand what is the future that Monsanto is trying to procure, to sell to us or propose. So for that, I needed to understand what is the past of Monsanto, and of course, and understand what is the present of Monsanto. So this led me to a very long, many years research. So I'm going to start showing you the book. So this first part of the book is all the publicities that Monsanto used from the 20s until the mid-80s. So, of course, I never contact Monsanto. This is, for example, and in the right side, you can see without chemicals, many more, etc., etc. This is a National Geographic ad in National Geographic, but they use the biggest medias to sell their ads. I never contact Monsanto. I never reach to them. I'm not interested on knowing what they have to say, because I know very well what they have to say. And I talk to many journalists and photographers, so I understand that they actually are not open at all. They just send you a PDF that shows how wonderful they are. So nonetheless, I thought that was important to include Monsanto and to include the voice of Monsanto. And nothing better than to put their the history of their publicity. Of course, I did an editing. I choose the ones that I think that were more important to understand the many different products, but most importantly, the slogans. I think that the slogans are without doubt the most important part of these publicities. And you will see how I use that slogans at the end of the book, how I decontextualize this slogan to construct a different reality that the reality they want to narrate. So after the publicities, we start with my photography book, my photography work. Of course, it's not only my photography work. I use a lot of different materials. I use archivals, documents, photographs that are not mine, postcards, videos, QR codes, so you can go to videos, etc., etc. And you will see how I use all these components. So the first part is the book. There are several chapters in the book. So the story of Monsanto is very long, very complex. You need like a Encyclopedia Britannica to make the history of Monsanto. Of course, I didn't do that. It was too big. So, but nonetheless, I choose what I call the keystones moments in the history of Monsanto that will allow us to understand who they are and what they're doing and what is the future they propose. So I start the book with this screenshot. Here in the left, you can see a QR code that takes you to a video, and is the video of the House of the Future of Monsanto. The House of the Future of Monsanto was a collaboration in the 50s, 60s with Disneyland in California, where Monsanto showcased all their products. Most products derive from oil, plastic products. So what they did is they made this amazing, very modern plastic house to showcase what is the vision of Monsanto for the future. And of course, the house inside was amazing. They did many videos. People can get in the house and start touching buttons so things move around. And it was really like the space house. And this attracted around 10 million people in the time it was exhibited in Disneyland. So you can see how interested I am, not only by Monsanto itself, but also about all these little other narrative that are built into the Monsanto history. Who knew, for example, that Disneyland collaborated with Monsanto So I always find very interesting these other stories that come to attach the main story. And we will talk about that later. So I started the work with this house in West Anniston. As you can see, I end with the house of the future of Monsanto, this first part. And I start the first chapter with a house today. I mean, this house was photographed in 2012. At that time was today. And it's a house that is 4,000 kilometers from Anaheim, California, from Disneyland. But it's a house that is completely empty, as you can see, is abandoned, and is in West Anniston, where a big pollution happened because Monsanto has one of the factories, had one of the factories there. And today is one of the biggest environmental disasters in the United States. So for me, it was very important to end this part with the house of the future and here to show what that house of the future looks like today. For me, this represents that house of the future, the house of the future 50 years later in the present. Of course, it's not the same house, but I play a lot with this kind of subjectivity. So there, of course, I photograph the contaminated landscapes, the city, but most importantly, I photograph the people. As you can see here, there is David Baker, is one not only was deeply affected by the pollution in that town, his brother died of many type of cancers at a very young age. Many of his friends died, but also he's one of the leading figures fighting Monsanto and asking for money for Monsanto to pay for the disasters and most importantly to pay for the future of these people in terms of medicine, hospitals, all this. We need to understand that what happened in West Anniston is not only a pollution of water and soil, but also people. The list of sickness related to the contamination in West Anniston is huge. Cancer, diabetes, problem, learning deficiency for young kids, etc., etc. I mean, the list is quite extensive. Here is a very good example of how I use documents. In this case, it's a postcard. I will tell you later how I do that research, where I find this. So the idea was really to photograph what this town is, and this town today is a ghost town. So you can see the business, how they are completely deserted, stairs that take you to nowhere, where used to be a house there that was demolished because of the soil contamination, and of course a population that is still there because they don't have any other place to go. Their land is worth anything. Monsanto, the money Monsanto gives to each one wasn't enough to leave that place and buy another place somewhere else. And as always, it is minorities, of course, where they place these industries, and poor people, people with very low income. So you understand the problematic of the people that didn't live in West Anniston. I use documents. I really like documents. I always say that my pictures are subjective. Photography is never the translation of truth. It's a way of seeing things. Nonetheless, I think documents are better to show the truth. And in this document especially, we understand that Monsanto knew they were contaminating a long time ago. And They knew it for 40 years. And they keep contaminated. And here in the left, in the right side, you can see we cannot afford to lose $1 of business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes you right away understand what is the dynamic of Monsanto and what is their game. Of course, this is internal documents that I got. And so in Aniston, I photograph the town, the people, but I also photograph what is called the source of the pollution. And I think that this is a very interesting picture in the sense of how I work. This is the Chocoloco River. This is the river where Monsanto leak chemical products for 40 years in the river. And through this river, all the town got contaminated. But you see the picture is in black and white, and you see this river in this red color. Of course, when I photographed the river wasn't red. And we never know if the river was red or not in a point in their life. So this is a picture I painted with acrylic. But why I did that? One of the reasons is because many of the people I interview and I talk to, they have this memory when they were kids that the river was between purple and red. And some days the river was purple, some days the river was red. And again, we don't know if this is a fact. This is a memory. Memories change. Memories, we believe in memories and we feed memories, and especially memories, childhood memories. But nonetheless, I thought that was very important to represent this memory, because this memory is not only about how the river is red or purple, but it's about a childhood and swimming in that river as child. So this is why I decided to do a reconstruction of this memory, and it's what we call a speculative documentary. And I think it's a quite interesting tool to be utilized as well. The second chapter is about Agent Orange. So Agent Orange was produced by Monsanto and Dow Chemicals, but Monsanto produced the strongest version of Agent Orange. And Agent Orange was used by the US military in the war in Vietnam. So the idea was, and you will see how linked is with their products today. The Agent Orange was used in the war of Vietnam as a defoliant. It means during the war in Vietnam was very hard to see the movements of North Vietnamese troops because of the canopy in the forest. So the best way to do it was to use this chemical, this Agent Orange. And Agent Orange is an herbicide. They sprayed it everywhere over the canopy with airplanes and helicopters. And of course, all the canopy disappear, it dies. And the component, the most important component that allows this fall of leaves and uncontained growth of trees that kill the trees at the end is called dioxin. And dioxin is the active component of Agent Orange. The problem with dioxin is that is one of the most dangerous chemicals made by men, women, humans, and the consequences are quite big. You will see. So this chapter, I talk about that. So I start in the United States, where the Agent Orange was produced, in a place called Nitro in the United States, in the south of the United States. So I photograph the places contaminated by this Agent Orange. It's not that they use it in the United States, but they produce it there. And they dump, as you can see in the picture in the left, residues of Agent Orange and dioxin from the factory. They dump it, they make holes and dump it in the ground, illegally, of course. And the consequences is that today this is a very contaminated area. So I photographed the place. Again, subjectivity in photography. This snake, it doesn't mean that this snake died by the pollution. Nonetheless, it was in a contaminated site. So I like to play a lot with this kind of narratives. So as you can see before, I photograph the contaminated landscapes, but also I photograph the people. And in this valley, it's quite amazing. It's terrifying. You know, every person I cross, neighbors, the next house, the next house, always there is a case of cancer in the house or some relative close by that has cancer, or a neighbor that has cancer. So again, documents. I photograph the maps or little Leroy draw, so I can find the contaminated places around this area. So I use that. I always try to explain where I gather the information, and I like, it's kind of documenting myself, documenting the story. You will see that in other places. This is all in this valley. People affected or relative affected by. Dump sites that has been sealed with this type of concrete. Of course, everything goes underground, under the water systems underground, and to the rivers, etc., etc. So I was interested also about the victims of Agent Orange in the United States, because, or the survivals. It's not only in Vietnam, but also the military personnel that handled Agent Orange got contaminated, went back to the United States. Some of them die, but some of them have children that born with all these problems. For example, Heather, you can see in her left arm, you will see another picture, or her leg. She's born like that. Here you can see a picture of her as an infant and holding the picture of her father. That was one of his job was to handle Agent Orange to be loaded in the containers to be sprayed later on. So I photographed few of those children of Vietnam veterans. Kelly on his bed, she's very sick. As you can see in the right side, all the medicines she needs to take almost daily. All her body is shutting down all the time. She has so many problems. Photograph souvenirs of them. Kelly, this is her father. This is a drawing she did before her father died, when she was an infant. And of course, I photographed in Vietnam. I photographed in two places. I photographed in the Children's Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City, where they have a place where they shelter children and young men and women affected by Agent Orange. And you will see why they need a special place. They are affected, deeply, deeply affected. So I photograph people, for example, this young man in his house, this young woman also, I photographed her in her house. As you can see, I always ask for archivals. This is a picture of her when she was an infant. I photograph in the hospital where they do testings also, so they keep all these jars with fetuses affected by Agent Orange, non-born fetuses, and the young children in the hospital. Lynn, she was in that hospital as a children, and now she's back in her house. As you can see, she has no arms. Nonetheless, she's quite amazing what she can do with her feet, how she handled the computer and pretty much everything in life is quite astonishing. She has a T-shirt with the U.S. flag. I didn't ask her to do it. She say, "I'm going to change. I will be right back," and she came out with this shirt. I will never know if this is a kind of middle finger to the country that did that to her, or if it's just as every teenager, they love everything that comes from the United States, and maybe this is her favorite shirt. I never ask. I don't think it's necessary, but I think it's very interesting nonetheless. So I was interested about the politics of Monsanto. Monsanto, of course, what allowed Monsanto to do what they do is also their politics and how they are embedded in politics. So for that, I traveled to this little place called Subject in Indiana, and this place was completely it was took by Monsanto. It was a little town that was took by Monsanto, and Monsanto built their factory there, and they completely deregulated the place. So they put their environmental laws, etc., etc. At least the regional environmental laws. And today is one of the most contaminated places in the United States, is what we call a superfund site. Of course, they sold this factory to another company, and today what is there, stay there, is a really high contaminated place that is in the border with the Mississippi River. So many of the pollutant went to the Mississippi River, being one of the most important sweetwater bodies in the United States. So you imagine the ecological disaster, not only in that place, but what this river can carry. I photographed the place. If you can see behind these gates is the ground zero of the contamination, even if the contamination is everywhere, but this supposed to be the ground zero. And what is interesting is that these houses used to be the former houses of the employees of Monsanto. We will go through these newspaper clips later. Here is the cluster of the contamination is in that place, in the left side. In the right side is the Mississippi River, where tons of chemical products were leaked. So another important place I went there is like 200 kilometers from Subject, is a Sturgeon. And in this place, a very big accident happened, an accident that changed the direction of Monsanto from only chemical industry to agricultural industry. So exactly in these tracks, this is train tracks, a train derailed with carrying chemicals from Monsanto. Of course, that can happen if a train derails. It's not the fault of Monsanto. But what happened is that Monsanto hid for many, many hours, something like 48 hours, what was really inside these containers. And when these containers fell into the ground and opened and leak all the chemicals in the ground, all the town was completely affected. Many people die because, of course, the evaporation of these chemicals. And Monsanto didn't say anything for 48 hours. If they will say something very early on, they will evacuate the town and life was saved. Not only that, Monsanto went to the morgue also to change the way people die, how they die. So they manipulated that information. Of course, because they knew they were carrying very dangerous chemical products passing by a very small town, and this is prohibited. So one of the problems I encounter in that place is that nobody want to tell me anything about what happened. I couldn't find people didn't want to talk. I couldn't find pictures, anything. But I realized that not far from there is a university, the University of Columbia. It's not the one in New York, but the one in Missouri. And actually, I called them and I asked them, you have anything related to what happened in Sturgeon? And they told me, yes, we have the microfilms of all the newspapers during all the crisis. So we have everyday newspapers of what happened there. So I use these newspapers to tell this story. So I went there, I scanned the microfilms, I digitalized it, and I use all, if you can read in the book and you can understand what is happening. And of course, I photograph where this material come from. The microfilm boxes, the machine that was used to scan. Here we go to Monsanto today. This is the part that talks about what is happening. And of course, there are many problematics with Monsanto today, but nonetheless, I thought that the most interesting, at least for what I'm doing, and if you see, I already talk about chemical pollution. So I didn't want to talk about chemical pollution today again. So I talk about a very important subject, that is the privatization of seed, the trademarks of seeds, and how Monsanto use genetically modified seeds to have full control of food, what brings a big problematic in food safety, because they control the seeds. So I took as an example, here is an ad in India, a Monsanto ad in India. And if you scan that, you can see right away a little bit how their commercial tactics are. So I start this chapter with these screenshots. The future, Monsanto is represented as a robot that will save the Indians and whatever they think they will save the Indians from. So, but mostly I photograph in the Midwest in the United States. I photograph mostly farmers that are being sued or were sued by Monsanto. Troy, for example, he was sued by Monsanto and he almost lost everything, even if he wasn't guilty of using Monsanto seeds. Monsanto, we need to understand that Monsanto has lawyers 24/7, and they can, for them, it doesn't matter if a case drag for 10 years. For a farmer, it's not the same. For a farmer needs to pay lawyers every day they work. So after a while, they decide to say like, okay, I plead guilty, I pay the fine, and I'm out of that. Same case with Mopar. And in the left side, in the right side, you can see the contract Monsanto make farmers to sign. And I hire a lawyer that knows very well all the lexic of Monsanto and in these contracts. These contracts, if you're not a specialized lawyer, you won't understand what it says. So they make people sign this contract without knowing exactly what they say. So this lawyer in this text here, actually in the book, when this paper is loose and you open it, and you can see under the contract, you can see the text. That is kind of vulgarized, so like that you can understand what it says. And what it says is quite, they have absolute power. They can see your bank accounts, they can check whenever they want. I mean, the list is, so it's a contract that is made to take power from farmers. The last part of the book is a collection I did during these 6 years of memorabilia, Monsanto memorabilia, like the herbicide handbook, but also very simple objects like a key holder. And at the same time, I took all the slogans in the publicities and I completely decontextualized this text from the images, and I use it to put it together with these very banal objects. So it's a kind of ironic proposition, ironic narrative. I finished the book with a grid of the manifestations against Monsanto in New York. This is a worldwide manifestation. So I went to New York, to the street. I set up a little studio and I photographed many of the people fighting against Monsanto, people like you, like me, citizens, everyday people. And I thought that was very important to finish the work, kind of giving homage of all these people that fight Monsanto. And of course, not only citizens, regular citizens, but also lawyers, scientists, NGOs, etc., etc. And here my designer, the designer I work with, did a little joke. He put a picture of me here when I was doing the testing of the light, and I didn't realize it until the book was published. So yes, it was a little joke he made, and I think it was quite funny. So this is the work on Monsanto. Let me go back. I think now, if somebody has a question. I'm trying to go back to the stop share. Oh. Yes. If anybody has a question, please, about this work, let me know. I see one here.
Yes.
That is the $1,000 question.
So maybe, yeah, if we just read from Anastasia, it's like, how much do you think about yourself as a photographer and how much as an activist?
You know, this is a very you know, at the beginning, I say like, no, I'm not an activist. I'm a concerned citizen, and I'm a photographer, an artist, and as a concerned citizen, I feel I have the obligation to work on these issues. Now, more and more, I kind of see myself as yes, as an activist, but as an activist that works in a very precise thing, that is photography and denunciating this type of problematics. So yes, I don't think you you need to be an activist. Yes, I think it's not very clear for me, but it's an interesting question, and it's a question I think about quite often, and sometimes I feel like one, so other time I don't. So I really don't know how to position myself. Now I'm working, for example, pro bono in a video for a group of ecological NGOs here in Arles to fight the construction of a new highway. So yes, in this case, I'm an activist. So I hope that answered. I'm wondering how difficult it was for you to find the project. It wasn't that hard. I keep it, Viviana, I keep it very restrained. Even if I can go all around the world to photograph this issue, I say to myself, I need to find the best examples. So like that, the whole story can be told without telling the whole story. And where I can find this. So, and the United States was ideal. The only place I traveled was Vietnam. Vietnam was subsidized by a company in the United States that is a small company that they fight Monsanto. And actually what they do is they sell seeds all around United States. They have it's a $10 million a year company. But it's not a very big company. And so their work is to sell seeds that are disappearing because of the monopolies of these big companies. So it's a quite activist company. And so the interesting thing is that they told me, listen, we have the money. You need, I don't know, I needed $6,000 at that time to finish it. And they say, we have the money, but we would like the people of the community, of our community, to collaborate for that. So they have a 300,000 people mailing list. So they put that mailing list in the morning, and next day in the morning, I have donations from everywhere in the United States that pay for that trip. So it was quite interesting way, crowdfunding. So yes, the rest I paid myself. I used to work as a commercial photographer in New York, so I have time and the money I needed to do these trips in the United States. The book was published by here in France, and this was all paid. I didn't pay anything for that. When you were working on the photographing, did Monsanto try to prevent you to work? No, at all. I mean, they know now who I am. They have said it publicly, but no, they didn't. I didn't contact them. By the time I finished the work, I'm nobody, so it's very hard for them to track somebody like me. And they have never tried anything against me. I think that would be very bad publicity for them. So,
can I just read the questions just in
yes, please.
Sorry, yeah, just
I
in
get
terms
lost.
of the video, then it's easier for others because then we publish it later in the library. But yeah, Andres is saying that your research work is wonderful, and I really like how some photographs can seem more subjective. They make us enter the atmosphere of the story. Maybe this is a very bad question, but when you started your research, did you know that the result will be a book?
Yes, completely. Actually, I never studied photography. I never went to school of photography. I learned. I cannot say I'm a self-learned man because such a thing doesn't exist. You learn from something or someone or many people. So I was lucky enough to reach to people that helped me and teach me. But I think my biggest teacher are photo books. I was very interested in photo books very early on. I even founded a non-profit called 10 by 10 Photo Books that today is a little bit bigger organization. I'm not a part anymore. So yes, photo books for me were always very important. So this book was thought as a photo book. And every time I came from any trip, I scanned the pictures. All the work was done in 6:7 and 4:5, medium and large format, a negative film. So I scan and start right away putting it in this kind of dummy I had in InDesign to see how the story was evolving, what I need to photograph, etc., etc. So yes, indeed.
Okay, then we have questions that are a little bit similar. So have you seen impact from this project? And is there any response from Monsanto on this project?
So this is a very interesting question. What is the impact of a photographic work? And I will be very clear with you. I'm very unromantic on what it takes about the impact of an individual work. If you are here to change the world, you are in the wrong business. Do medicine, do lawyer, become a politician, become a full-time activist, etc., etc. Now, photography by itself won't change anything. Very few images have changed things. Naturally, for example, the image of the genocide, etc., etc. But what is important to know is that photography needs to be a part of something bigger than photography itself. So how you exhibit, for example, how behind all my exhibition is an educational program, how you make your work accessible, how you have a 55 euros book, but at the same time, you have a publication that is free, and it's pretty much what is in the book. So again, my work was presented in the European Parliament at the same day. They invite me to do an exhibition of this work. At the same day, they're trying to pass the law to ban glyphosates in Europe. So how my work is used? So yes, the work is effective if it's used in something else that photography and the little minuscule world of photography itself. I think a photojournalist, and I'm not a photojournalist, have a little bit more of saying on that because their work getting, in newspapers, etc., etc., etc. And this is what I'm trying to do. For example, one of the main newspapers in France used my work during almost a year, each time they were denunciating Monsanto. And I asked, and they contact me, what do you think? And I say, yes, perfect. So yes, it's good to be in museums, it's good to have a gallery, it's good to be in festival, but it's very important also to be a part of something bigger. And it's all these little things that make something that make things change.
Yeah, maybe this connects also to Marcy because we have a question if you had first obviously about Monsanto, but I think we went into that already. But then if you had partners in this project, so maybe when you were making it, but then also beyond when the project was finished, because I know you had book awarded several times, you had the work presented in galleries and other venues. So yeah, who were the partners in this project?
So besides the company that sells seeds that gave me the money, and the people that helped me, but friends, people close to me, I pretty much did the work by myself, in the sense that, yes, I contact, for example, to contact the farmers in the Midwest, I contact the Center for Food Safety in the United States, and they just told me, yes, call him, call here, blah, blah, blah. The same with the Association of Agent Orange Veterans of the United States. These women told me, yes, you can call her, him, but besides, of course, these people that helped me directly, I didn't have any organization helping me for this work. The only is my publishing house, Actes Sud, but the work was already done, and the dummy was already done. What they did is just to take it to mass production. So yes, I work for all these years pretty much alone and surrounded by the closest people that help me to do that.
And just a question from my side. You were based in New York when you
Yeah.
were doing the story, right? So how much of preparation and research was there done before you started like really going to
I think 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, before I started, it was quite difficult to okay, what I'm going to tell. I mean, the story is there, of course, but how I'm going to tell the story, and why I'm going to choose this and not that, why I'm not photographing the children's affected in the north of Argentina by Monsanto products, and why I'm doing it in Vietnam, etc., etc. So yes, and again, I think it's something very important. Why we do research, not only to understand what is the subject, but research will let us know how we're going to photograph it, and why are we going to photograph it. So this is why research is very important. Is why are you photographing in color? Why are you photographing in black and white? How? What is the approach you're going to give to the story in terms of narration, etc., etc. And of course, to understand as much as you can the subjects. Subjects are very, very complicated. And today what is wonderful is that we have all these tools in internet, so we can have access to so many things. No, as before this type of access was only for few privileged and the people who have the time and the money to invest on that. Today, from your house, if you do good research, that you need to learn how to do research. You need to learn how to go into the layers of the research and translate that research. But this is something you learn. I mean, I didn't even finish my high school, so I'm not somebody very specialized on this kind of things. But you learn, and so yes, research is quite important. And again, I try to control, and I think maybe I'm trying to avoid that now because I'm going into another direction. But at the beginning, I even go to Google Street View before I went to any place to see what that place looks like. What is the mood there? So like that, when I arrive, I'm not completely lost. So I know the place is green, has a lot of trees, the streets look like that, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, so when you say you did the research, obviously, we have here two questions that go into like, why did you choose book as a medium to tell the story? Is it a medium to tell the story? And if you considered making the book also without documents and text, so how much did research of photo books also affect how will you present it? Did you get inspiration there? Or how much did this research that you did on the story affected how you will present it, obviously?
So I think, first of all, it's very important to say that in terms of research, there are many people who has worked on Monsanto already, scientists, NGOs, journalists. So doing research for me is to gather all this information that are everywhere and to put it together and to translate all this research in a visual narrative with text, of course, because there is legend, text, etc., etc. So when you talk about research, more than of course, it's research because you spend a lot of time searching, but a lot of the work is to look for the people who has already worked on this issue and gather all this together. The book, yes, I think the book is I think it's the best format to tell a story. I mean, the greatest stories in history are through books, writing or photograph or photographic book, photo books, etc. So yes, I think what is what is wonderful about photo books is that I see it as an infinite canvas. You know, if you don't have exhibition space for you, it's very hard to see how things looks in the wall. Yeah, you can do little pictures and put it together one and another. But I think when you start working on a book format, you are constrained to a narrative from a beginning and an end. If at the end of the thing you decide to start with the end and finish with the beginning, or that doesn't matter, but you are constrained to a linear narrative, in a narrative that it tells you what is missing, what is working, what is not working, but also a place where you can put text, where you can put so many things. So yes, I think a photo book, and I always say, even if you're not doing a photo books, I think the photo book format is quite good to edit a work. So what I do is I open an InDesign, I look for a book I really like, I measure the book, and I put the same dimensions on InDesign and start. And this book was designed, I mean, one of the important things of this book is the design. This book was not only known because of my work, but also because the design. The design is very effective and very good. And this is a Venezuelan designer, a friend of mine who did it. So he says one, I mean, you are one of the few photographers that give me a dummy that is so complete for me to design it. So I don't need, and he changed some things of my editing with some suggestions, but you know, you need to give to the designer the story. This is the story, and the designer, his work is just to put that story in a new space and to give that space shape. So again, when I was working on the book, I did my own book. The design looks like hell. I mean, I'm not a designer. The design is horrible, but it gave me. I even designed the cover, designed where the text goes, etc., etc. Of course, I'm not a designer. A designer would take care of that. But for me, it was very important to, you know, to have all the things put together.
So Mahdi is asking, when can this project be seen? If complete project is online, or is it the book?
Yeah, you can go to my webpage. You can see it online. You can buy the book, or you can download the newsprint.
Mhm.
And the work now, we are at the end of the work. Since 2017, the work has, I don't know, 30 and I don't know how many exhibitions, from a small institution to big museums to etc., etc., etc. So the work is the second edition of the book now. That is very important. It's a new edition that is a smaller, bilingual, more, it's cheaper. I wanted to do something cheaper, more accessible.
Okay, so this answers it. You said, yeah, you're at the last stage of the project, but Yadira here is asking if you're still working on it. No.
No, I need to move on.
Okay.
I just finished a new work that I'm exhibiting in Italy next month, and after these questions, we will go through this work very quick.
Yeah, so we'll just ask. I'll keep some like question maybe for late. We can keep these questions for later.
Okay.
Because it's more general about photojournalism, documentary, and research approach. So maybe you can start with the second part, and then we'll go into more questions.
Let's go with the second part. So the second part, this is. Sorry, this agent lecture Hamburg. So I'm enter full screen, and we do play, but play is hidden by this thing. 1 second. We have it all under control before. Okay, now play.
Oh, I've seen her. Here? No. Out there.
So, another one. So the next work I'm going to present is called True Colors. True Colors talks about the misleading environmental message of car companies, and especially today with this new electric car. So I'm becoming more and more interested on deconstructing the narrative of corporations. I'm always interested in corporations. I think one of the biggest problems to make change, the ecological change that are needed, is the narrative, the corporate narrative, and how this corporate narrative are completely misleading. What is making a shift in the idea of the public of how to consume, what to consume, etc., etc. So I was very interested on the Dieselgate scandal. The Dieselgate scandal started in 2014, and is when we discovered that Volkswagen was lying about the emissions in the diesel cars. Actually, they put a software in the car computer that lied to everybody. So when the car was doing testings in labs to see how much it pollutes, the computer knew that, and they did everything is necessary for the engine to pollute less. That meant taking power from the engine, etc., etc., etc. But as soon the car was in the real life driving conditions, the computer knew, and the car polluted even 40 times higher than what they say. So this work is based on that. And later on, we discovered that all these companies actually were doing the same. From Volkswagen, of course, BMW, Mercedes, Fiat, Renault, Volvo, Nissan, Ford, etc., etc., etc. So the work, I realized I didn't took one picture on this project. Yes, I took a picture of a computer. This is the only picture I took. But the project is based on the landscape is one of the biggest selling points in automakers marketing. In all the history, we have cars, and behind the cars, these beautiful landscapes. Here you can see how important is landscape through the history of car commercials. What is interesting is that at the beginning, cars, landscape used to be the backdrop of the cars. They were used as a backdrop. But little by little, the car became embedded in the landscape at the point that the car become a part of the landscape. And of course, this didn't happen one day to another one. This happened in 40 years, 50 years of car marketing. Not even the car is there anymore. Or the car is there as a part of the landscape. Even cars are now saving nature. Etc., etc., etc. I think you all get the idea. So what I did is I thought that was quite interesting how the same landscape these automakers are polluting is the same landscape they use to sell the cars that will later on pollute this landscape. And with all this ecological narrative, an ecological narrative that when you do a little bit of research, you understand that it's completely BS. So what I did is I selected the cars involved in the Dieselgate scandal, and I searched which years these cars, the models that belong to those years where they were in the Dieselgate cheating emission scandals, and I look for the sales brochure or of each one of these cars. And of course, in the sales brochures, like this one, and I think this one is for Mercedes-Benz, you see how the landscape is used. So what I did is I took part of the landscape and I reprinted the landscape. And I need to show you. So I reprinted the landscape in metal, in big metal sheets. This is a serigraphy, silk screen printing. For that, I use a pattern that is a pattern that remind us the coral reef. But the interesting part, I mean, the important part of it is that I reprinted the landscape of their publicities with a special ink that is an ink made by car pollution. It's a new ink developed by the MIT in the United States. So this ink not only is carbon neutral, but is carbon negative. That means that extracts all the pollution of the microparticles of the exhaust pipes, and they use it to do this ink. So what I did is I reprint all the landscape they use as commercial. I reprinted with what I think is a more factual representation of these landscapes, that is pollution. And this is the metal plates I use, and I will tell you about the colors of these metal plates. So you can have an idea how. So these metal plates are 1 meter by 1.5 meters, and they work as diptychs, as you can see. And here you can see how they are. They're quite big, so it's 2 meters by 1.5 meters. In one side, you have the landscape printed with this pollution ink, and in the other side, you have the name of the color where I'm printing that landscape. And of course, I selected more than 50 colors that are that have natural names, colors being used by these automakers. For example, Atacama orange. We understand that today all the lithium for the new generations of cars, a big majority come from the Atacama desert in South America, in Chile. And what is interesting is that the pollution in that place is generating this extraction is quite problematic. So like that, I have 50 different colors and 50 different landscapes from derivated from cars involved in the Dieselgate. All publicities from different brands and colors used by those brands. For example, in the left is a publicity of Jeep, and this is the glacier blue that is used by Renault. And all companies involved in the Dieselgate. Here you see all the different diptychs. So at the same time, I scanned the computer that hosted the software that was cheating. And I used satellite pictures from when the Dieselgate scandal came out in 2014. By 2015, 16, people was returning their cars in the United States. This was hundreds of thousands of cars being returned. So they didn't know where to park it. And I found in Google Earth, all these images, satellite images of the parking lots they built to shelter these cars all around United States. So what I did is I used the computer motherboard and I put it together with the parking lots. And what is interesting for me is that vision of micro and macro, and how something so small can have such a huge repercussions. So this is a panoramic that is almost 10 meters long. Is 1 meter and 1 meter and a half height, and 10 meters long. You can read it left to right, down, like a circle, like this. Of course, I use also the computer. I show the computer, I exhibit it as an object. But at the same time, I photograph documents. I photograph the documents of the United States suing Monsanto, the executives that were involved in that, the Interpol red notice that is the most wanted list of these high executives of Volkswagen, why they were incriminated in the Dieselgate scandal. And of course, I'm also interested on the future of cars. And we have today this electric car. What is interesting is that they are marketing today as zero emission. Zero emissions where? This is the question. Zero emissions in Europe, in the United States, where they will not pollute the cities. But what about the batteries, where the batteries are made, where the lithium is extracted, where the cobalt that is very important for these batteries is extracted? And we today already know that in the Democratic Republic of Congo, all the problematics of human rights abuse of the people mining cobalt, children. So, and at the same time, we understand what is happening in the Atacama Desert with the lithium extraction and the water that is used in a place where is no water, and the problematics with the people that live there, etc., etc. This is a series of pictures of satellites of the the lithium triangle between Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. That is where they think 80% of the lithium will come in the next generations. And they are starting to build all these huge mines. So this is a work I'm exhibiting. I just finished, and I'm exhibiting next month in Torino. Quite beautiful images. I think they are the colors. And of course, the colors make things also at the diptychs. So all these things talk together. I'm doing a very fast mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Europe. I also produced a 6-minute video. What I did is I took more than 40 publicities that I found in internet and TV ads from car commercials, and I re-edit all these commercials. So I do a video that I think is more realistic about the drama that is happening with this new electric car and the environmental danger of that is to come. I'm going to show you a little bit of the video. So everything you will see, images, sound, music, comes from the commercials you're seeing there. They're just re-edit, or everything is re-edit. The only thing is that the president of the director of the United Nations, that is the one that speaks at the beginning of the video. But all the images, music, sounds come from the publicities. Go.
Unsustainable production and consumption are sending emissions skyrocketing and degrading our land, sea, and air. Today, 1/3 of all land is degraded, making it harder to feed growing populations. Multinational corporations are filling their bank accounts while emptying our world of its natural gifts. Ecosystems have become playthings of profit. With our bottomless appetite for unchecked and unequal economic growth, humanity has become a weapon of mass extinction. We are treating nature like a toilet, and ultimately, we are committing suicide by proxy.
So the world goes from the video goes from today, the car with petrol engines. So it's a long description of the madness until the electric car today. There we go. This is the part of the electric car.
Imagine a world of the future.
We need to go all in.
Are you listening to the sound? No. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear the sound. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, because it's quite. So the electric car, and I think we can.
It's the future.
We need to go all in. Not as an optional model, but only one way.
The story of living progress continues with our vision of tomorrow's progressive luxury. Experience the future. A personal experience device. Human-centric. Focused on you. Of what your active lifestyle can be.
Okay, I'm going to advance a little bit because it's a little long, and of course, it finished with the same craziness of the petrol engine. We're going in the same direction. Anyway, this is the end. Okay. So this is the last work. Of course, what I'm interested on is in the narrative, again, of these multinationals and how these multinationals have a complete misleading a narrative of ecology and ecology as they see it and mostly as is convenient for them. So, for example, the electric car is a very good example. Instead of rethinking the way we relate to car, instead of thinking the way transportation is built today, of course, thinking about that means building less cars. What they do is to think about a new product that we need to buy again. It's like I think the CDs is a very good example. I mean, maybe a lot of you didn't remember that, but when CDs came out, the idea was that, oh, now we need to buy everything again. All the LPs, cassette is now we need to rebuy everything, but in CDs. Cars is happening the same. Now, instead of using this very important and crucial the ecological context where we are, instead of saying like, oh, we need to build maybe smaller cars, we need maybe to share cars, maybe we need to produce less cars. No, we're going just to produce a technological solution that will solve all the problems and will, most importantly, keep us in business selling cars. So this is my work of True Colors. I went very fast. It has a little bit more of things, but I hope you kind of understand.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mathieu.
How I go again to full view here? I'm lost. Okay. Okay. Anybody has questions?
Well, there was a question from before still that that is here. So it's again connected to research. And it's more like what are the basics or principles that you apply during research, and what's your approach in research? I know you said, yeah, that you kind of find all the layers of it, but yeah, where do you maybe start, and how do you structure your research?
You know, I always say, whatever you decide to embark on, big chances are that you have people already that are working on that. And people that are maybe not photographers, but scientists, researchers, academics, whatever. It's always people already working on these issues. So what is important in research is to research would give you not only to understand the subject, but would give you the key to how you will translate this visually. And so how you start research, it's very easy. You, for example, you are interested on cars. The first thing you do is to look first what you want to say. And again, I think most of my work I think the core of my work is this kind of how you say that in English? Something indignation. I think that this is the core of my work. And of course, through this indignation, I have developed a methodology that helped me to articulate this indignation. But again, I'm not only, I'm also very critical in documentary photography itself. And the way I'm working today is completely related to the way I don't want in documentary photography. For example, my theory and what I'm working today is a reflect on that. Documentary photography until now is working on the consequences of the issues. It's always the consequences of the issues. We always go to faraway places, photograph what happened, come back and talk about it. But what about the sources of the problem? So this is why Monsanto is my first approach to that. Of course, I travel, I photograph victims, I photograph contaminated places, but the most important part of the work I did is Monsanto. And this is very clear, is a direct accusation and a direct attack on Monsanto. And I think that is very important in documentary photography today. We cannot keep going in the same direction of National Geographic, for example, this kind of very poetic, yes, but who is behind this? Who are, we know the names, we know who they are, we know where they live, we know, so why we don't go directly to that? And I understand the problematics of representing the sources of the problems are very complicated, mostly because they're very boring. It's nothing to photograph. How you photograph BP, for example. No, it's more exciting to photograph the polar bear in the melting ice. But this is when I say that there is when not only to be a photographer, but to be an artist is important, because you have all these tools to be able to represent such a complex issues. So again, I think, and I'm not saying that everybody does that. Many colleagues, photographers, are working on this type of representations where problems come from. And of course, I'm not saying that all the problems come from corporations, but most of the subjects I'm seeing in documentary photography, we can trace these subjects to Europe, and we can trace these subjects to a very specific power structures here in Europe. So again, for example, global warming, yeah, sure, the polar bear in the melting ice, but what about Shell, Total? And how can we work on these type of subjects that are, for me, much more, photographically speaking, much more interesting? For me, it represents bigger challenge. And this is why I'm working today in subjects like the Dieselgate, how you photograph the Dieselgate. For me, this is what really attracts me in photography today. The way to represent, but also the denunciation of the core of the problematics.
And maybe connected to
And sorry, and research, and there is when research is damn important, because you cannot do this type of thing. And what is interesting is that research is not only to understand the subject, but research will make you understand how you will represent this subject. So this is where, when photography become very multi-layered and become really, really, really interesting, I think. Question.
Yeah, Kelvin, I hope this answered your question, but I think it's great to have this insight, Mathieu. Thank you. So there was two questions connected to this Dieselgate project. So there's a question that you obviously used copyrighted footage.
Yeah.
Did this present an obstacle? Because corporations tend to protect their content, and how did you navigate that?
I don't navigate it. I just use it and see what happens. Normally, corporations, they are very kind of their image. And to go against a photographer, I hope, until now it has worked. I don't know what happened. I even use images from greenwashing to denunciate, but I think to go against a photographer is very bad PR for them. And you know, it's not that I'm a very famous photographer, but I think I can make just noise enough for them to say like, maybe it's not a good idea. And most importantly is, I think they don't care about me, and they, you know, it's, I mean, I'm a photographer exhibiting in a festival in Torino, and here, yeah, sure, in a museum, but again, you know, I think they're more worried about, you know, activists and scientists and lawyers and big public figures than Mathieu Asselin.
Yeah, but it's still very important, because obviously in Aral, if you see like the impact that festival has,
Yeah.
I think also through the places where you present the work, you can reach a much wider audience.
No, yeah, and it's the media is there, and it's published in magazines and newspapers. No, of course, yeah. But I think it's, you know, it's a mix between both. Let's this go away. It will go away in a few months. And the other thing is like, if we start taking this guy, I work with a curator. This is very important for me. I work with a curator, same curator all the time, and he always say, the best thing that can happen to you is a lawsuit for your career. And I say, like, no, thank you. But no, it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And I hope it won't. It's a big mess. A lawsuit is a big, big mess.
Yeah. Especially with the big fishes, as you say,
Yeah,
and with
especially the big fishes.
yeah. So Magdi is saying, yeah, what great artistic work. And all this like about creativity, how to present really current challenges that we face, but yeah, not in a way that they are represented probably in many of the media. But Magdi is asking if you had any problem with copyright for using the commercial material.
No, never. I always, but let's be clear. If I know who is the photographer, I mean, I pay photographers for their work. For example, in my last exhibition in the Rencontre d'Arles this year, I went against, I denunciate a paper mill factory north of Arles that is polluted. And I did many things. One of the things is I use the same images they use in the internet for greenwashing. I used it in the exhibition. So these images, I went to the place where they sell the images and I bought it. And I used it in the exhibition. So the same, the pictures in Monsanto, the pictures that are from an agency, from a photographer, I pay for these images. Now, the images used by multinationals, that multinationals pay for it, I don't care. I don't, until now, I don't care. Maybe later I will care the day I get a lawsuit, but.
Yeah, but you said you also worked as a commercial photographer, right, in New York, so.
Yeah, I work for the United Nations, for NGOs, and I work for public institutions. I never work for a commercial private thing. Yeah, I work for interior designers, friends, people that, but yeah, and this is, I always try to keep my work, even my commercial work, even if today I don't do it anymore, in sync with the values I try to portray on my work. Even where I get the money as well is very important. I'm very publicly, and I did publications and I did works about the sponsors of today, a big documentary, photography documentary prizes, HSBC, PICTED. This year, BMW having the Rencontre, a prize that is supposed to be for projects where we talk about ecology. So I have denunciated that publicly. Even if Le Rencontre for me is like my house, I have exhibited there twice. The director is a very good friend, but they are doing greenwashing. So I'm very critical also about the little world of photography. So
Yeah, but
it's very important.
I think we have to be, because as you say, all this money and funds, even for festivals, because we discussed this over the weekend. I was also at a conference that we focus a lot on sustainability, travel, not traveling, and then seeing where the awards come from and where the sponsors come from, and really checking their policies and where do they get the money, you know, because I think it's very important to also have that personal responsibility to check
Completely.
that and
I
to
will,
be aware.
I will invite everybody to go to my webpage, and there you have something called downloads, and there is a publication called a cultural capital culture that talks about that. So you can see a little bit what is my position into this.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes. What made you choose a printmaking approach for this last project that you presented?
Because the only way to use this ink is doing serigraphy. So it's an ink that is only made for serigraphy. So, and it was quite complicated because these pictures are very small. These pictures I use, they have, I don't know, 150K. And I needed to make it at the size of 1.5 meters. So then this is why I use this pattern I showed you before that looks like coral, because this pattern, when I took the picture and put it into a software of artificial intelligence that blows up the picture looks like drawings. So to give back the picture, this photographic texture, I use that pattern. And of course, the only way to print these landscapes again with their own pollution is doing silk screen printing.
Okay. Well, for now, there's no more questions, but I'm sure at least one or two will usually pop up at the end. So there was a question. I'll just go a bit into the community because there was a question how to join our Discord platform. I think we have some students, current students from our level 1. So I did share that link on as an answer to your question. But if anyone else needs this information, just write us to community@7.academy, but I'll write it also in the chat. So Anastas is asking a question. I knew there will be more. Do you work on a new project, or at least if you have ideas already for a new project you're going to work on?
Yeah, it's complicated. I have many ideas. I need to see which one get hooked. I have many ideas that I keep, and they come out and back to the closet again and come out again, but I'm interested on growth. I'm very interested on growth, and this idea of sustainable growth and the utopia of sustainable growth. I'm interested, but all this the main idea is to start with a book that was published in 1972 that is called The Limits to Growth. And it's it's a keystone book. It's the book that was already telling us about what is happening today. And it was the first scientific report, a serious scientific report that says, yeah, or limits and how we're going against the wall. So I'm trying to use this book as a keystone to start an idea I have, but I don't know exactly how to put it together. And I think let me show you very quick before we finish how I see the ideas and how I organize it. I use this software. You can see it now.
Yeah, it's Miro, right? Yeah.
Miro.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So let me just put this down. Oh my God, there is so many open things. I don't know how to, this is chat. Okay, so you see how I organize everything. And even I keep the emails that I send, the message that I send, the replies, the email, but each email is attached to an story and how, where I found the things that inspire me and the images that I would like to use, why I would like to use these images, how these images are connected between, etc., etc., etc. So I even I do testings and things to see how things work, etc. I keep full articles that I can rely to later on, all these kind of things. So I think that is very important, the way you organize your story. I think a Miro works quite well.
Yeah, it's great, I think, for creatives. I know a lot of artists in different fields that use it. And I also use it, so I can really recommend it because it can be very visual. You can also do a lot with maps and just even project management or things like that. So I think it's very good tool, and I'll also share it on Discord for everyone. So yeah. Okay, so I think we're almost at 2 hours. So I think we really had a great debate and also really wonderful 2 presentations. I really appreciate that. And I think everyone here, I see that almost everyone stayed until the end. So that's always a great sign if people are spending 2 hours in front of their computer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the insight. It's really like great insight on really your approach and how you advise also on how you do research, because I think it's very important to check everything before. And as you say, I wrote it down. I think it really stayed with me, how you translate the research into this visual narrative. And I think, this for everyone here, there needs to be thought on that, and also what represents you as a photographer, as an artist, and what makes sense for you. So we got a great insight into that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all for these 2 hours, and I hope to see you soon. I mean, I haven't seen any of the faces, so I won't recognize you. So if you see me when you come, or if you come to Arles or in any place, please let me know.
Yeah, I'm sure, like, if they will come, some here probably will apply to our level 3 course. And Mathieu is also sometimes one of the lecturers that comes also to present his work in Arles in person. So yeah, when you are there, just to let us know, and Mathieu will be probably very open to meet you. So thank you so
very
much, and see you in Arles.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Thank you. Good evening.